Welcome back to another episode of Have Game Will Travel. I'm your host, Bennett Newsome, also known as Damn It Bennett out in the gaming community. But as the Director of Esports Growth and Development at Full Sail University, I'm super passionate about exploring the diverse world of esports and gaming beyond just skill levels. So whether you're a first-time listener or a returning fan, we're thrilled to have you join us for this virtual journey through the experiences of industry professionals. Get ready to engage with our guests and learn from their perspectives. Remember to submit your questions in chat and we'll get them featured here on the show. But sit back, enjoy the ride as we kick off another episode of Have Game Will Travel with our guest, MajorManiak. Welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Good, man. I appreciate you for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I always want to give our guests an opportunity to just kind of introduce themselves real quick, give a little quick intro on who you are and what you do, man.
Well, I'm a former professional Call of Duty player. I was competing in the Call of Duty League since about 2019. Well, in the CWL era, that transitioned into the CDL era. So I recently just retired. And yeah, I'm doing a little bit of content stuff, but also working towards my degree in project management. So my next steps are just contributing to the esports space or gaming industry in a new way and kind of just navigating a new path. But yeah, I had a really successful and loved my journey as a professional player. So I'm excited to talk about it with you.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, welcome to the show. Excited to have you. And let's talk a little bit. So, getting to this level takes time, right? There's probably a lot of people that have aspirations of being a pro gamer playing in the CDL. Talk to me a little bit about like the origins of this and getting started in your journey when it came to, going pro.
Well, I started gaming when I was on the GameCube. So
Yeah.
I've always been a gamer at heart, and that kind of transitioned. I got a PlayStation 3 in the summer before sixth grade, and that was my first time actually playing online. I played COD 4 after it had already been out. Um, really enjoyed it, and it kind of just started from there. I never really understood what competitive gaming was until Black Ops 2, where I
Okay.
started playing game battles with a couple of my friends. They introduced me into it, and from there I started entering tournaments. I started winning money, and my mindset was like, well, if I want to try to take this to the next level, how can I approach it? And it was through competing in the Call of Duty World League at the time, which I would travel to events and compete in the open bracket. And from there, I just was doing well, and it gave me opportunities to join better teams
Right.
and eventually make the pro league.
Yeah. Was this something that you just kind of like started with some buddies of yours? They're like, "Hey, let's go play in this tournament," and then it started to formalize into, "Hey, I'm good enough to hang with these guys. Like, let's find some other players that are at that level."
Yeah, so I had a good friend of mine who actually introduced me into game battles, and we started playing, GB XP matches together. And at the time, I wasn't entering tournaments, so we just kind of just played ladder matches. I enjoyed like competitive search and destroy. It was such a fun game mode for me, and having like the idea of strategizing and coming up with counter strats. And so it started early for me there, and I started entering tournaments around Advanced Warfare towards the end of that
Okay.
game
Yeah.
with a couple of people I was gaming with at the time, and we started winning them. I even played with a couple streamers, and I kind of got involved into that S&D community a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's when Black Ops 3 dropped, and it really a couple months from there, and that's what really changed competitive for me. From the get go, I started entering tournaments with a bunch of different teams and players that even play now,
Yeah.
and even stream now. And that was also kind of that throughout that year. It was my journey of streaming as well. Um, I started streaming my gameplay, and this was before Twitch even had like the affiliate program or the
Right.
gifted sub program. So
Yeah.
earning a Twitch partnership at that time was very, very difficult, and
Yeah.
it was a big thing for me, and it was a really big goal of mine, and for my community to try to give me that Twitch partnership.
Hmm.
And I was averaging towards the end of that year, I was averaging a couple hundred viewers. I was telling people like I was getting denied my partnership. So I kept telling people, stop rating me, because other streamers in tournaments, if we were to beat them or they were done streaming, they would raid me.
Yeah.
And Twitch was like, we don't really know your community, so we
Right.
don't know if this is your authentic viewership or not. So eventually, by the end of the year, I had gotten my sub button, and that was like the peak of my hard work
Yeah.
through like grinding the competitive S&D community. And then from there, I kind of just kept doing the S&D streaming, and it led into me, okay, how do I take this to the next level? Because I was winning tournaments, but I wasn't satisfied, and I was watching, and it wasn't until I saw Optic win champs Infinite Warfare, where I was like, okay, I want to be on top of the stage playing against some of these guys, because I was already playing them in tournaments, in
Right.
S&D tournaments all the time. So I'm like, I know I can compete with these guys, but I'm not playing Respawn, I'm not playing Variant. And there was like that at the time. It's not like this anymore, but there was a separation between like the Variant community and the S&D community. And I was like, this is something that I want to take to the next level. I already have competed with these guys in some of these tournaments. I know I can compete with them, so that was like my next step.
Yeah, I love that you talk about like the Twitch partnership aspect of like getting started years ago. There was no like path to partner then, right? Like
No.
the it was a big question mark on like what the goals or what you needed to achieve, what the average viewership was that you needed. So like getting that sub button was huge, and congratulations on hitting that. So would you say that that was like your first like really big milestone in your career, was getting partnered on Twitch, and that helped kind of lead into the next part of your journey?
Yeah, I think it was a couple different accolades that like kind of led to that competitive journey, like in the league, which was like winning online tournaments, and then that transition into like me streaming and
Hmm.
showcasing those moments. And then once I got the Twitch partnership, I had gotten so much love from all the people that were supporting me throughout my like competitive search and destroy career, like watching me play and just trying to be like kind of like an entertainer, but at heart I was never really a streamer, an entertainer. I was a competitive
Yeah.
player. So like, and that just showed in my my attitude, and how frustrated I would get when we lost, but how energetic I would be when we won. So that was definitely like you said, that was definitely like a big accolade for me that kind of just pushed me forward.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of times you need those things to kind of like keep that momentum moving forward. Did you have like a moment in your journey, and whether that was in the beginning or later on, that you were kind of like, oh, I'm doing this. Like I've made it, right? Like, did you have this kind of like aha moment as a professional player that you were like looking back on your journey, and that you were, riding the wave, if you will?
Um, yeah, I've had a couple of those moments. I mean, in that time period where I had gotten like the Twitch partnership, I was like, it was more so thinking like, how can I take this to the next level? But
Hmm.
now as I sit here and I kind of reflect on like my journey as a pro, and even like when I was working towards and getting ready to announce like I was retiring as a professional player, there was definitely a few different moments where I had looked back and I was really at the top. And a couple of those moments specifically were like when I was on Gen.G and we were doing really well as a core five, and we were really praised for like how good our teamwork was, but we were never like the best players, but and we were never like the most talented team, but like what separated us was like how good our teamwork was. And that was always something that was big for me um throughout my competitive careers. Like I always wanted to build like a bond with my guys and build a bond with my team, and I think that would, and I believe that transition into like success.
Yeah.
So that was like an early part of that for me. And then transitioning into one of the best teams I'd ever been on, which was Atlanta FaZe, and being with a a group of guys that I have competed with and against, and it kind of really all came together. There was like, all my hard work. I'm on the best team in the league right now
Yeah.
with some of the most talented players. That was really what it was for me. And then obviously once you win a championship and you're on the stage and you're celebrating, it's the amount of adrenaline and the feeling you get from hosting a championship with your team and just like all that hard work. Those are the moments that I really reflect on. I'm like, okay, all my hard work and time and effort and sacrifice, because it's so much sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
to compete at the highest level. You have to just really be all in, which is kind of backtracking a little bit to where you know I was never an entertainer, I was never a streamer, I was a competitive player, so I always put that first.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely several moments like that for me.
Yeah, talking about that, like, the sacrifice of, you know, wanting to be a pro, going pro, and then, looking at things around you in your world and your life. Like, what sort of sacrifices does it actually take to be at that level? There's a lot of young gamers out there, both in the scholastic and collegiate levels, that are, their goal is to go pro. Like, what sort of sacrifices do you have to kind of put on the back burner to make it and be successful at that level?
Well, I think for everyone it can be a little bit different just depending on your situation. For me, I I constantly would deny like going out with friends, or if my family was going out to dinner and I was in a tournament, I couldn't go. Or if I had a
Right.
tournament that day or I had a scrim that day, I can't go to dinner, guys. Like, I'm sorry, I'm working.
Yeah.
And I was treating it like a job. Even at the time where I wasn't getting salaried, I was still grinding harder, because to make it to the top, you got to grind more. This was my mindset. You have to grind more than the people that are already in those positions, because you have to outwork them. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the mentality that I had. And so I was just, I was never going on trips. I was never really doing anything for myself other than just playing and grinding and streaming and competing and just trying to make it to that top level. And even once you are at the top level, to stay there, you really have to put in the hours. And that's kind of why I closed the chapter on competing, because um it's so strenuous, and the mental that it takes. Like, I was you have to just put in so much time every single day. And what I found hard was the balance of um taking time for myself over putting time into my competitive career. And I
Right.
actually spoke about this recently, um with a couple of ex pros and current pros. Is like, I would always, like, in a way, I would guilt trip myself to where, say I'm done playing for the day, and the scrims are over, and I wanted to watch a show on Netflix, and
Right.
what's a popular show at the time, I'd be like, why am I watching this show instead of not like watching VOD or like
Right.
streaming some ranked play? I would always be like, do that to myself, or even like other games at the time. Like, I was never playing other games, and I thought that balance is actually really unhealthy. I don't think it's good. I think you need to have a healthy balance, which is also other things I had learned throughout, as I gotten older and as
Hmm.
I've gained more experience. Like, you need to have that healthy mindset to where, like, you're going outside, you're getting in exercise, you're getting in sunlight, you're
Yeah.
you're being social. So it was honestly like a journey of navigating those factors and finding that right balance. And it was difficult to find that balance, throughout, the first couple of years. And I eventually did, but for newer and upcoming players, especially in the collegiate space, I would say your education is super important.
Yeah.
Don't 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 ignore your education. But obviously, if you want to make it to the professional level, then you need to put in that time. So you need to find the right balance to where you can, balance your scholastics, but also be putting in time into your competitive career. And it doesn't have to be 12 to 15 hours a day. It can
Yeah.
be 6 to 8 productive hours where you're putting in effort. So yeah, I think it's all really a balance.
Yeah, and that balance, it's tough. Like you said, you took you a couple years to figure it out and figure out what's right for you, because struggling with the burnout of that. I mean, I think there's people that are playing casual that run into the burnout because they're just so busy with everything else in their life. So
Yeah.
finding that balance is obviously really important. What's something that, like, as a player, you know, you've had this career. What was something that kind of you didn't realize that came with the territory of being a professional player that most people wouldn't see from, like, the outside?
Mm, that's a great question. I think I think the level of well, I kind of always carried myself in this way, but like the level of like professionalism is really important, especially once we transitioned into the COD league. Like, you know, treating yourself like a professional, acting like a professional publicly, but also when you're a part of an organization and they have staff that are, you know, making helping you with creative aspects and they're making content around the team and you have a you know, a manager and an owner, you got to be able to have like, you know, productive and quality conversations with those individuals, and that's something that I actually really enjoyed because my mindset is like I wanted to be a player, but I knew this wouldn't last forever, so I was always trying to like build those relationships and kind of
Yeah.
understand the value and the importance of like an organization in esports and what keeps that running.
Yep.
So I think that was something that I learned and I didn't know much about at all because I didn't have those relationships,
Yeah.
and those were ones I really value, especially amongst the owners that I've worked along with and played under for their teams. I think it's just more of like the relationship building that comes into it as well, which is was something I was really familiar with.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and like I think that's such a cool part because I think there's such an opportunity for the next generation of leaders in the esports world that there's so many opportunities from a like employment status and like
Mhm.
career status in the esports world, just like traditional sports. Like, you need agents, you need managers, you need social media people, you need marketers, like all these people that are working towards elevating the players that are on stage. You know, those things are careers and things that need to be done, and like being able to come and meet them, you know, at the same level that they're at is always a really good thing. So I love that, like, insight, because it is something
Yeah,
that most people probably don't think about. Like, hey, I'm here to
yeah,
game, but now I've got to,
yeah.
like, have these conversations. I've got to do a PR training, right? Like, you know,
Right, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
internet's
Literally, yeah,
forever, right? So
yeah, literally.
what was,
You know what I
like,
mean?
what was the hardest adjustment from you for you as a gamer, as someone that, you know, had kind of free will over their own time, and going in and joining, you know, a team environment? Like, what did that look like for you, and what was the kind of adjustment there?
I think the adjustment for me, which was one I learned to absolutely love, was the you know, moving to different cities and you know, kind of being on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've always been a pretty independent person, and I come from a family who my dad, he was in the military, so we moved around quite often as I was growing up. So I was kind of always kind of used to relocating.
Right.
But the one thing that I thoroughly enjoyed, which took time to get used to, was just living on my own. But it wasn't a negative experience. It was one I really, you know, developed in as a person, and I was able to explore and be in new places that I can come to look back on and be like, I didn't really like living there, or I enjoyed living there. So, you know, I've lived in a few different states now
Yeah.
through my competitive career. I lived in Atlanta for some time. I lived in Dallas on several occasions. I've moved to Minnesota. I lived in Florida, Boston. So I've been able to experience like all these different cities and on my own as well. To where now, when I look back and I'm like, where do I want to live someday or
Right.
be? I can be like, oh, I really liked living in Florida, or
Yeah.
I loved living in Dallas, and I'm familiar with the city now. So that's like what was a new transition for me, but one I really grew to appreciate.
Yeah, and I mean, you play with some major orgs too, man, along your journey. Obviously, like Gen.G, FaZe, Rokkr. Came down here to Miami. Like, did you have a spot that did really felt like home for you? On obviously relocating a lot over the years. Was there's a specific place that you just really felt like, hey, I really this could be the future.
Well, for me, I think it's two different things. One place that really felt like home was when I lived in Dallas under Rokkr,
Yeah.
and I think the big reason for that was I just loved the team I was competing with. I loved where we lived, and I think it was just a balance of like how good we were performing and our bond at the time, and just the environment we were also in. We were all kind of in the same apartment, and our quote unquote facility was in the same building,
Yeah.
and we would just call it the office. We would just go down a couple floors and we would play our matches from there. And when an event would come up, we'd all travel together from Dallas. So that was one that really felt like home. But my favorite place was living in Florida. I love Florida. I love South Florida.
Yeah.
I lived in Boca for a while, and then I lived um, outside Miami for a while too with a friend of mine. So Florida is definitely my favorite place, I would say,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
Dallas is a close second. Just especially because of just the esports bubble and
Yeah.
technological bubble there. There's so many gaming companies and players and organizations that are based and house their players in Dallas.
Yeah.
So I think from a networking perspective, it's really good to live in Dallas too.
Yeah.
So I'm in between both. I really like
Okay.
Dallas, and I really enjoy Florida.
Florida got to win there. That's good. That's good. I like
Yeah, yeah.
that. So something that talking to some students and at Full Sail we focus on a lot of different degrees, whether it's music and games or esports, whatever it may be. I was talking to a student and they were talking about music and that drive to get signed to a label. Like it was such an important part of their journey to try to hit that and finally get recognized by this elusive record label, right? And so and I kind of like internalized that, and I brought it back to like the esports world. And like for you, like what was it like joining like your first like professional organization, and what did that mean to you? Like what did that look like, and what were the kind of the feelings that you initially had?
Yeah, that's a great comparison, because it is really like that. It's very similar to when you're just trying to grind for that first opportunity. And for me, it was in Black Ops 4 when I was competing with my team at the time. We were trying to qualify for the Pro League. So once we did qualify, that feeling, I actually remember before we had won our last match to secure our qualification, we had lost our first game of that weekend. This was in Columbus, Ohio, so MLG housed us there. We went to the facility there and we competed on the stage they had, and we had really choked our first match to LA Thieves at the time. It was a series we shouldn't have lost, but I vividly remember just in being in the hotel room after that match that night, like just preparing. And this was the first time I took initiative, like as a leader, and like trying to like just bring the team together, just doing everything I possibly can, so where like I don't look back and like regret any of the moves I made. And I was just going through people's VODs, like going through their team VODs, coming up with a game plan. And I have all these notes in my phone, just notes and notes. And I brought that to the team, and I just remembered like, okay, we're playing these guys. These guys like doing this in S&D. These are their tendencies. And I just kept that in my mind, and I translated that information into my teammates like mid game as the rounds were starting, just so we were all on the same page and we could predict or adapt or even counter them if we wanted to. And just seeing like that hard work and like just me taking it upon myself and securing the pro league spot. We didn't know who was going to sign us at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
but I knew like we were, in a way we were securing the bag. Like I was just saying, oh, bag mode. This is our opportunity here,
Right.
and it was like one of the best feelings. Just my family was super supportive because they knew, how much time I had been putting in. And yeah, a little shortly after that, we flew to Los Angeles and we met with two organizations. We met with Gen.G and we met with G2,
Yeah.
and they both had great offers for us. Ones that I was never thought I would see in the esports space. These are like, great numbers these guys are willing to offer, and you know ultimately we went with Gen.G just because it was a better offer, and we just loved the way the organization presented themselves. They wanted to just have like this camaraderie
Yeah.
um, within the organization for us, and they were super supportive. So I think though the feelings were just, it was an emotional one, um, and it's just so reflective of like all the hard work like me and my teammates had put in to like lead up to that point. It
Yeah.
was like really the beginning of a lot of our careers too.
Yeah.
For Cole Havoc, for Mox, um, Envoy. So it was it was or Nagafin, an Envoy. He qualified with his own team, but Nagafin, he had already had a successful career. Spacely at the time, he had already had a good successful career. So for me, Mox and Havoc, it was really like our first real big opportunity, and we were super excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man, and that's gotta feel great. Even like thinking back to like, uh, that journey, that milestone, hitting that. You earlier talked about like being in a team house and like having scrims that you would do, and you play your matches down a couple floors, and then talking about like even in your notes, like going in your phone and putting in what was happening, what this team was doing, and being able to recite that like mid match right before you guys are playing. How do those like team dynamics really play like a successful role in like what makes a truly like a great team in your eyes? Like, is it those moments where you are able to like recall and focus on, hey, this is the thing, and then make sure that your guys are going in the right direction? Like, what does that look like to you when you think about like what truly a great team is?
I think a big part of it is trust.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to bring up an idea or a strategy, you got to have teammates that are willing to listen. You got to have teammates that are willing to trust you. So I think a big thing is trust. I think the other thing too is you got to have not every player can do this. Obviously, I've played with many different players throughout my competitive career. Not every player can like think back to the VOD you watched or the things you went over the night before or the day of, and just in the moment be able to be like, this is what they're doing, guys. Like they're doing their normal strats. We should do this instead. So it's really important to have like one guy or two guys that can kind of bounce those ideas around each other, because the other players, if they're in the league, they're solid players.
Right.
That just might not be their strength, but if they're willing to listen and have the same vision as the rest of their teammates, that's just one thing that will make you a great team. I think the other thing too is like you got to have the talent. You
Right.
got to have the teammates that are constantly showing up, putting an effort into scrims, putting an effort into getting better, putting in um, time outside of just competitive scrims as well. But it's so many different things. I think it's trust. I think it's being on the same page. I think it's having the talent. I think it's for sure being able to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Because many teams, you could be a great player, but you got to be able to play under pressure. You got to be able to, rise to the occasion when it's your moment. And it's a bunch of different things. And you don't have to have the most talented team to win a championship.
Right.
You can have a couple, you can have like one talented guy, a couple team oriented players. But if you're all sitting down every single day, putting in effort into scrims, having a similar mindset, being consistent with your routines and your schedule, and not coming in one day and you're super energetic, you're ready to go, you're ready to get better, and then the next day you're tired, you're not calling out, you have low energy. That's not the path to success.
Yeah.
I think there's multiple different things, but to really emphasize, your question, to have a team that listens to that feedback, it's just trust and just putting in the effort to actually listen and watch and see what's happening.
Yeah, and you talk about like things going wrong, pressure moments on stage. Like when a team is struggling, what goes on behind the scenes that maybe the fans don't get to see, and how you're able to kind of turn that ship around.
Yeah, so if a team is struggling, it can go a couple different ways, especially when you have like a coaching staff. Mm, I've been a part of some teams that have struggled. I mean,
Yeah,
every team at some point is going to struggle. They're gonna lose an event or they're gonna lose a couple games, and it's all about like how you react to that.
yeah,
Me as a player, there's definitely times where we would lose a match and I'd be super frustrated, but it was never directly at my teammates. It was more just frustration because of how competitive I am as a player and a person.
right,
And I would always try to just figure out what went wrong. We would lose a match and I'd be backstage like flipping through the VOD. Like I'd be hitting my arrow keys like what happened?
right.
and 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 obviously that's sometimes not the healthiest way to go about it as a teammate either, because your teammates just see you and you're super frustrated. And
Right.
but as a team as a whole, it's you got to talk about the issues. You got to figure out what's going on. Is it a role issue? Is it a communication issue? Is it something that's in practice and we're not showing up to scrims and we're not putting an effort into scrims? Or is someone constantly playing bad? Okay, maybe let's have a one-on-one conversation with this person, figure out what's going on. Maybe it's not even something that's in game. Maybe it's something that's personal in their personal life that's affecting them in game. So
Right.
it could be so many different variables. And I think what makes a great team is really highlighting what the issue is and how to solve it without deteriorating the rest of the team. I've been a part of teams where we're struggling and it's like we're a sinking ship and we don't have enough pails to take the water out.
Right.
And it just feels like we're all going down.
Yep.
Which sucks. It's an awful feeling to be a part of that, because that's when, trust has been broken. You have management and staff and coaches where whose main job is obviously to help the team succeed, but you got to be the mediator to, alleviate that pressure and help, bring the positivity back up in the camp. So it's a bunch of different factors, and what makes a great team, like I said, is being able to understand what that problem is and quickly finding a solution and getting the team back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, it's like quicksand. Like you start going down, it's hard to get out of that. But having good coaches, like you said, I totally agree that it's there from a player's perspective. In that, like as an individual, right? Like, what are some things that you can do to like kind of get out of your head when it comes to like, hey, I made a mistake. And if I blow up on this, I'm going to bring everybody down with me, right? Like, are there things that you would do as a player to try to like stay positive and be like, hey, this happened, we're moving on, like as we continue to try to rebound from what just happened?
Yeah, I think what I would always remind myself is you always get to you always get to play another game.
Yeah.
We might have lost this game. I would always try to take accountability. Like if I made a bad play or if I struggled during a match, I'd be like, damn, that's on me, guys. Like
Yeah.
I was always a player. I was always the guy where if we struggled or if I did bad statistically, I just be like, guys, it's on me. Like I'll make sure I show up and I'm better next game. And I think that's what kept me motivated. It's like you always have the next chance to prove yourself. And if you're a part of this league, and me as an individual looking back on the journey I had went on, I would just remind myself of what it took for me to get here and all the time and the success and the great moments that I had. So if I had a bad game and I'm frustrated, I would just take my time. I would go to the gym. I'd let off some steam, or I'd go for a long walk, listen to some music, whatever. Those things to help me get like out of my head and just kind of calm myself down, just
Yeah.
take myself out of the moment, and then just be ready to just go into the next day of scrims and have like a positive mindset. Be like, okay, we got another match in 5 days. We'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We got our first question from chat. It's from Samurai Tank. She asks, looking back, is there anything that you know now that you wish you would have known when you were first getting started?
I think, yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think there's two things. One, I kind of always known this, and I've actually mentioned this a little bit ago, where I've always been a competitive player.
Right.
I've never been a content creator. And there was moments where I actually really took time and put time into my content. I just, looking back, I know that I could have put more time into streaming, especially when I was, at some of my peaks in my career, where I was winning tournaments. I was a part of, at the time, really well-known organizations, even some now,
Right.
that are still a part of the league. I wish I was putting more effort into my content and not. There was times where I would lose a game. We would lose and I could tell you about 48. There's 48 players in the league. I guarantee all 48 of them feel like this at some point, where you have a bad day of scrims, or you lose your league match that day, but you planned on streaming.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to stream because you're just in a bad mood, and people are going to ask you about how that game went or what went wrong, or maybe you played bad that day and they're like, "Oh, Mike, you suck," or I guarantee everybody at some point has felt that way. And I wish, looking back, I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter. And I even had this conversation with a couple players recently. I was like, dude, if the scrims go bad, or because they're younger, so I'm trying to tell them from my perspective, if scrims go bad, who cares? Just turn the stream on. And I think that's the big thing for me, is I wish even if I had a bad day of scrims, or if I had a bad match, or the team didn't do well in a league match, I should have just turned the stream back on. And then the second thing was figuring out my healthy balance a little bit earlier. And in the beginning of my career, I was still successful without finding that balance.
Right.
But again, when I talked about how I would, kind of guilt trip myself into, if I were to watch a show, or if I weren't, watching VOD and I was doing something else, I should have been a little easier on myself, because, in the grand scheme of things, if you have a productive day and you're putting in that effort 6 to 8 hours a day, and it's productive, and it's highly competitive, and you gave it your all, take some time for yourself every single day, or a couple times a week. It's okay to do that, and you can still be successful. So I think those are the two main things looking back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love, as a content creator, I love that mindset of if I knew, I would totally dive deeper into it. But you're right. You have a bad match or bad scrim. People are going to ask the question, and it's you just don't want to. You don't want to have to face that right away. But saying, "Hey, sucking it up, and let's go out and get it." Hey, at least the chat's active, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I was never one to be scared to face the noise. I would do it all the time on social media. If people were coming at me, I'm like, bro, come on, man. I would tell them straight up. But I think it was more frustration at just myself, and oh my gosh, we lost, and just being mad about just the competitiveness of it. That I was like, I'm not turning on the stream today. But I guarantee you, every single person that's competed at some point, within the league, or even in other esports too, they feel that way at some point. It's pretty common from most people I've talked to.
Absolutely, yeah, and you've kind of found yourself obviously in a leadership position, and going through your career, building up to that. How important is it to have that kind of leadership in a competitive team, and how did you feel for yourself you grew into that role?
Yeah, I've always thought of myself as a leader. I think the first time where I really took into that role was where I mentioned a little bit ago, was the situation where I was writing down all the notes, and I was trying to establish myself as a leader. As I grew, into my competitive career, there's moments in game where you gotta have that voice that is decisive and makes a call. Especially if it's
toward, if say it's 205 and a hard point, and there's two different ways you can play a situation. Oh, like, should we hit this scrap or should we rotate? I would always try to be that voice that my teammates could trust and make the call, because I was very confident in my decision making, like on the fundamental level, and I would continually try to make those kind of calls, especially when it would come to search and destroy. I was always calling strats. The 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 championship that I won with Rokkr, where we reverse swept, I might not have been doing the best in a couple of those S&Ds. I think on one of them I was like 3-3 on the Miami S&D, and we won like 6-1 or 6-0, or I can't remember the exact round count. But I'm strat calling every single round. I was play calling every single round, and it's a great feeling when your teammates are just they trust you. Or even if they're playing confident, for instance, that last map, Standy, he just made a kind of like a confidence call. It's like, guys, I want to do this pillar strat. I want to hit this mid pillar strat. And it's like, you love seeing that as a leader too, where like your players, your teammates, they have the confidence, and like you got to give them that. If they have a vision, you have to give them that, and you cannot call them off, because then it doesn't show your trust as a leader as well. And
it's like a two-way street, right?
It's a two-way street. Yeah, it really is. And so I think the most important thing I learned as a leader, and trying to be an in-game leader as well, is not everybody is the same. So you can't I can't talk to somebody and criticize them the same way I can my other teammate.
Yeah.
You have to understand each person's like personality and how they take criticism, and what the best approach is to, talking to them, especially when it is to, like, in terms of getting better as a team. And like, if you're telling them, oh, you should have done this, I can't. One of my teammates that I have a really good relationship with, they know I'm not targeting them or I'm not attacking them. But if it's someone where we don't have the same level of a relationship, but we're still teammates, I got to kind of navigate and be flexible with how I talk to them. And I think that's something that is such an important skill that I've learned, because even in the corporate world, or even in relationships, you got to understand people's personalities and how you speak to them, because you can't speak to every single person the same way.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is trying to be an emotional leader, and like one that leans on empathy and trust, and being flexible as a communicator.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. Everyone has a different way that they want to be, communicated with, right? Like they're one. It's not a one size fits all type of mindset, which goes a long way. We've got another question from chat that I want to ask. Comes from Rogue Calby, and they ask. I've been watching you since Vanguard. My question is, what's the best advice for a player for playing main AR, since that's the role I play with Armada, which is our esports team?
Sweet. I like that question. Well, my biggest advice as a main AR is trying to be, well, the main as the game has developed, the main AR role has kind of died down in a way, which is I think that's just kind of how the game has evolved, especially with the newer CODs and the movement. The gameplay is so fast. But as a main AR, the biggest thing that I tell people is trying to be that, like, trying to be, because you're gonna naturally be the slowest on the team. So you want, like, your sub players to be to have that trust in you. So where, like, I'm gonna try to give an example. So, for instance, like, I'm sure you've been playing Black Ops 6. So, like, Skyline Hardpoint, for example, if you're trying to break P3 and you're spawning from the bedside, like grass side, you want to be able to like navigate your subs. Your subs are the tip of the spear, but you got to be the ones to point them. So you got to be communicating, like, hey, I'm chowing over your left, like slide close right, and you got to be able to have like that kind of small talk with your team, but also you got to be fundamentally sound to where you're making the plays to like rotate early and set up in the power spots, and be a communicator to where you can kind of develop your team around the map. You want to be able to point and tell them where to go, but for them to also trust like your guidance as well. And that takes time, but it's some of the and in terms of like gunfight wise too, like always try to set yourself up in power positions and take advantage of those spots. And it's okay to let people run past you if you're in a power spot and say they need to get time. Like leaving time white is okay in some situations as well. So it's a bunch of different things, but I think the biggest thing is being the fundamentally sound person on the team and being able to establish like good communication with your subs to where you're just they're the tip of the spear and you're just telling them where to go.
I like that. You bring up an interesting kind of point in that question, right? Like the game evolves, right? The game comes out, it launches, there's a season, there's new weapons, there's new things. Like, how, as a professional player, do you manage the evolution of the game each content cycle?
Yeah, that's a different conversation. This is a different conversation too, where I think in a way Call of Duty sometimes shoots itself in the foot with dropping a new game every year. So as a professional player, you don't know what to like. COD's always kind of gonna be the same. It's in like an arcade shooter. You point and shoot. There's good movement. It's always gonna feel relatively the same, but there's always gonna be different aspects to it. There's gonna be different guns. There's gonna be different maps. The health might be different. It might be 150. Now it's 100.
Right.
We might be playing 5. Right? Yeah, we can run on walls now. We can bounce on walls. We can jetpack. We might have 5v5 and now we have 4v4.
Right.
So you always gonna which is what another thing too that I found interesting as a professional player was just being able to adapt and be flexible, because in Call of Duty especially you need to be able to adapt. And the biggest thing from my experience playing and transitioning from like for instance a game like Cold War, where we ended the season probably as a top 3 team. I felt like I was a top 3 AR at the end of that game, and then we transitioned into a game like Vanguard where it's like you got to completely learn new maps, new guns. So the biggest stepping stones are just understanding the game structure, how spawns work, obviously the basics like where the hills are, how to hold the hills. So you do that with your team and you do that with your coaches, and you're really watching a lot of VOD early on to understand, certain spawns, the best way to play certain hills, finding the meta for the guns, coming up with completely new new strats for S&D. Some might work, some might not. So you got to adjust where it's applicable. And those are the biggest things. Just you got to be flexible. You got to be adaptable, because if you're now, you might be really good at one game and not good at the other. So it can be challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean that's not exclusive to Call of Duty either. There's a ton of games that do this exact same thing to their pros, where they're like, "Hey, the new season here's these crazy things that happen," right? Like you're like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
What? So
yeah,
that's awesome. Talk to me about like game day. Like, what did like a normal preparation look like for you when you were at a major tournament? You were going on main stage. Like, what did your day look like?
For me, I would always, so say we traveled to an event, we're there. Most just to kind of give you like the overview. So you would travel to an event. The first day, it's just like a chill day. Maybe you get a couple scrims in at like 6 or 7 o'clock versus a couple teams. The following day is always going to be like media day.
Yep.
So like that day will be media and IT check-in. And during that time period is where like teams will also scrim, and then usually the day after that is like the Thursday, so you'll be starting matches that day. Thursday, I'll wake up, I'll usually go to the gym and I'll do like a light workout, and like kind of finish with some cardio. So just light weightlifting, kind of get the body going, get the mind going, and that would probably be like 2.5 hours before I have to like leave to the venue, just to give myself time to like shower. And then once I'm done with the gym, I would always try to get like a good breakfast, like some like eggs, some toast, some fruit, and then probably like a coffee. And from there, I would just go straight to the venue. I would always try to have like music with me as well. I would always try to have my headphones on me just to like kind of be in the zone. At the time, I'm probably listening to like whatever my favorite song is. I never really had like a particular uh like song I'd always listen to. I would always just listen to like whatever my favorite was at the time.
Right.
And I'd be doing that, and then when we get to the venue, it's the same thing. I'm like warming up on the setup. I got the music on. I'm just trying to get in my own element and reflect on, because usually the night before I'm going through VOD and I'm like looking at so say we're playing Atlanta FaZe that day, and I'm trying to understand what these guys do, because the other thing too is like you'll do prep, so you'll have an idea of how you like what maps you'll play, because every team has so much research on each other, especially with VOD now, like
Right.
VOD. You can see what other teams like to play, so you're gonna have an idea of the map set. And I'm thinking about, okay, if I'm playing, for instance, we're in Cold War. Say if I'm playing Raid Hardpoint, what do they like to do on P2? How do they like to hold? How do they like to break? What are their S&D strats? So I just kind of think of these things, and while I'm warming up, and then we'll probably play like a warm up scrim. Every time you should play like 3 or 4 maps, and you play the maps that you will have in your match. So say we have Raid Hardpoint in our map pool, and the team that we're warm up scrimming, say we're warming up versus Optic, and they have Checkmate Hardpoint in their map pool, but we don't have it in ours. We'll play them on Checkmate. They'll play us on Raid,
Yeah.
and it's just like a warm up scrim. Get the body, get the comms flowing, get the movement going, the gun hot, and then from there, like I'm just trying to keep myself in like a calm space. And right before the match, I would always like to just like do some like deep breathing and kind of just like lower my heart rate and be ready to go, get on stage and have like a good series. I think the biggest thing for me was just getting in, like, I always tell like my teammates and players this now, is just you got to have a consistent routine, one that you do all the time before every match, and even if not on match day, try to have that same routine. Like I would still, like, during my seasons, I would always try to, like, get a workout in, a couple days out of the week, and eat clean, to where like you don't want to throw your body off, because it might sound stupid, but there's a lot of science behind it. If you're eating good, if you're active, it increases your cognitive ability. It increases your reaction time. It's going to make you feel better. You're going to sleep better. That's the other thing too, is like you want to get good sleep too. If you're not getting good sleep consistently, you're not going to feel good. You're not going to play good. You're going to be low energy. So it's like a multitude of those things, and that was really my routine. It wasn't like too in depth. It wasn't like crazy. I wasn't doing any placebo things, but just having like a good, clean routine.
Yeah, clean routine, obviously important. Eating healthy, getting sleep, like you said, that's crucial. You don't want to be gaming all night, staying up to the early wee hours of the morning, and then having to go and perform. Right, you want to get that rest. Such an important part. We got another question in chat from Royal Katsu. They say, just like Kelby, I've been watching since Vanguard, and you as a main AR, I have a question. What's the best way for an SMG to work around the AR in order to give the AR the most optimal outcomes, such as power positions or gunfights?
I like that question. I think as a sub player, knowing those areas of the map where you can be pushed up and you could take advantage of the space and like pivot around different areas is the biggest thing. So when you watch the Pro League and you see, for instance, I give an example on like a rewind hardpoint, for instance, this year on P2 Hill. You'll see a lot of sub players, like if they're the team holding, you'll see a lot of sub players, like they'll be in stage or they'll be in blue and they'll be like pinching the spawners that are spawning back gen. So like if you're doing things like that to where you're applying the pressure, your AR can get in the power position such as the cop car or the trash heady, to where like if you die,
you can spawn up and still refill the angle, like refill through hill, and they can just stay put because you're applying the pressure throughout the map. So I think as long as you're applying good pressure, this is the other thing that separates pros from challenger players, in my opinion, is challenger players and at the amateur level, they don't know like what a good death is. Sometimes if you get pushed out on a cut and you die, but you deal some damage and you don't get a kill, it's okay because you're going to know the information, you're going to know where these players are coming from, where their break is coming from, and you're going to be able to tell your teammates, hey, they're breaking through this side of the map, focus here. Whereas if you are playing like turtled on a setup and you don't take the timing to push out a cut and you die, now all it takes is that team, the enemy team, to kill you guys, wipe you guys once, and now you're all spawning out. They broke the hill. Yeah. To where again, if you push out the cut, you get the information, you die, you still spawn good, and you guys are ready to now play turtle if you have to. So I think the biggest thing is just playing aggressive, knowing where you can take advantage of the space, and just telling your teammates, hey, like, this is where they're coming from. Just applying the pressure. Always applying the pressure. Like, you're the tip of the sword.
Yeah, I like that. So, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the show. I always want to give you an opportunity to shout out where people can find you, how to get in touch with you, what you're doing, and then we'll hit some rapid fire questions here to end out the show. But go ahead. Where can people find you? How do they get in touch with you?
You can find me on any of my socials at MajorManiak. I've been doing some content, but I'm also like I said, I'm trying to navigate the gaming industry now. Working towards being a part of a company or esports organization at some capacity. So yeah, you can find me at MajorManiak, all my socials, and yeah.
I love that. I love the content. So definitely go follow his channel. You can click on it right here on the stream. All right, rapid fire question: favorite Call of Duty title of all time?
Black Ops 3.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was an easy one.
Yeah. One teammate that you'd go to war with any day of the week?
Priesta.
All right. Go-to loadout or weapon class that you've been playing with, or just maybe one that's like your favorite?
Well, right now in this game, it's the Amy's, and I use the reflex, the ported comp, infiltrator stock. I don't remember the rest of my attachments. It's like the go-to AR class right now with like the normal Renetti pistol and just like a trophy.
Okay. All right. And final, well, not final, but was what LAN event that you've participated in would be number one, never forget?
Definitely my Rokkr reverse sweep, that event in Cold War. Outside of that, it was my first event win with Atlanta FaZe in Atlanta. So those two.
Okay, awesome. If you weren't playing Call of Duty, what game would you go pro in?
I would say CS, but it would be hard.
Yeah.
Those guys have been playing for 15 years.
Yeah, dude.
they got some experience on me.
That's
I think it's just because it's like S&D,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then there was one more question from chat that I wanted to hit before we go, and that was, what's your take on challengers making it out of the pit?
I think, yeah, this is a question I could go on for days and days about. So with challengers, my biggest advice for a player in challengers is to gas yourself up. No one's going to do it for you. If you play a team in challengers and they're a top team, you tweet out that scoreboard. You tweet out any clips of you doing well versus them. Constantly gas yourself up. Put yourself on a pedestal because people aren't going to do it for you. It's very competitive. It's cutthroat. You're competing against everybody else to maybe get one spot that opens up in the league, right? So you need to do everything you possibly can to put yourself out there. Play with teammates that have the same goal in mind. If you're playing with a teammate and he's not showing up for practice, he's not putting in effort, confront him. Acknowledge, hey, what's going on?
you need to have players that understand that you all have 25% to put into the team. If someone's not putting in that work, you need to go a different direction. In terms of the COD League as well, they need to put more support into challengers.
Yeah.
So they need to be having a challengers event at every single tournament. It can't be 2 out of the 4 of the year. It needs to be every single major. There needs to be challenger support. But in terms of the individual, just grind, put yourself out there, and play with teammates that have the same values and the same goal in mind. And yeah, I wish you the best.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us here today. Really do appreciate you being here. Guys, our next show will be on November 6th right here on the Full Sail Armada channel. Until then, we will see you later. Thanks again, and have a great night.
Thank you, guys.